Have you ever run into a truly content person? I mean, honestly, someone who's really content. Did you like it or not? You know, like a content person is someone who can celebrate your successes with you, with no strings attached. I mean, come on, there's nothing like running into a truly content, settled person who can find enjoyment in every circumstance and situation they find themselves in, who can celebrate others and not have to lead the conversation back to themselves. Have you ever found a very attractive person who's discontent? They're easy on the eyes but hard on the heart. You start to think about it. Contentment is actually pretty appealing. And if you really step back for a second, you go, you know what? I'm slightly interested in contentment. I could actually use some contentment. Paul speaks of this in his writings to Timothy. He understands how practical, how necessary, how imperative, frankly, contentment is in this short, brief life on dusty planet Earth. Now, he's speaking to Timothy, and the context in which he's talking to Timothy in our letter today is he's talking about church leaders. He's talking about pastors. He's talking about preachers who basically feel like preaching and leading a church is a way to make a quick buck. He actually says this. It's kind of a crude way to say it, but he just comes out and says it. He says, they're not preaching the whole truth. They're kind of, saying what they want to say, and they believe, Timothy, that their ministry and stuff is going to make them wealthy. It's going to make them super rich. That's his context. Now, because again, he's instructing his young protege. And he goes on in verse 6 and he says, now, actually, godliness, a devout life, will lead to riches. What? It will lead to gain and wealth, but not riches and wealth like you think. It'll lead to the wealth and riches of contentment. A devout life brings wealth. It does? Yeah. Actually, those preachers are right, but not right at all. A devout life brings wealth, but the wealth is this. It's the rich simplicity of being yourself before God. Contentment. Paul makes a very strong case for contentment. If you're still not sold, if you still don't think contentment is relevant, if you still don't think contentment is all that attractive or contentment is all that necessary, Paul makes a three-part case for contentment. He says, all right, here's why you need contentment. Number one, verse 7, you came into the world with nothing, and you're going to leave the world with nothing. You can't take anything with you. What is Paul speaking to? He's speaking to, first of all, the brevity of life, the shortness of life, the limitations of life. Eternity is what matters. Life is short. I think Paul is also saying to Timothy that, hey, life is short. One day of being discontented. The problem with that is it can lead to another day. And another day can lead to a week. And a week can lead to months, and months, years, and years, decades. And before you know it, you have lived a life completely discontented and unsatisfied. And you have ended up despising the days you did have, and the things you did have, and the family you did have, and the friends you did have. You missed it. And life was here today. It's gone tomorrow. It's a vapor. You know what? You don't have tomorrow. Do you know that? You don't have tomorrow. And you can't recover yesterday. All you have is today. When you're 100 years old in your deathbed and your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids are standing around your bed, what will matter in that moment is not that you got that extra deal. It's not that you got the extra square footage. It's not that you got the yacht, the boat, the extra car. It won't be any of those things. So what matters then should matter now. Pretty logical. Contentment kind of makes sense. He starts to kind of allude to the idea that discontentment is a stealer, and it will steal from your fulfillment and satisfaction in life. His second point, verse 8, but if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. Jesus says in Matthew 6:25, he says, isn't life more than food and life more than clothing? He goes on to exhort and teach and preach on the subject of anxiety and worry. Remember, he says, if you're short and you worry, you won't get any taller. If you're bald and you worry, you won't grow grow hair. You know, he's saying worry's not going to help you. Worry is useless. Worry is fruitless. The point of food and clothing is a stand-in. Food and clothing is a representative of the necessities of life. Paul is writing to Timothy, and he's alluding to the fact that isn't God faithful? Isn't God the provider? Doesn't God know what you need when you need it? Is God not faithful? What about God, Timothy? What about God? When we are discontent, we put ourselves in the position of provider. We put ourselves in the position of deliverer. We put ourselves in the position of the ultimate caretaker. We are our own source, and we are our own strength. He says, come on, Timothy, if we've got food and clothing, if we have a God who takes care of our needs, just like Jesus said that he would, can we not be content? If you're feeling discontented, if you feel unsettled, if you feel unsatisfied, I would appeal to you and say, wait a minute, what about God? Isn't God sovereign? Isn't God faithful? Isn't God true? Won't God take care of you? There are no promises and guarantees that everybody in this room will drive a Bentley someday. But when we get to heaven, we won't care. And guess what? Life is short. Timothy, have you seen these people who live discontented? Have you seen these leaders, these pastors who are obsessed with money? Have you seen the results? Look at the results, Timothy. Listen to the colorful, bombastic language that Paul uses. He says, now those who desire to be rich fall into temptation. Notice it does not say those who are rich fall into temptation. God's got no problem with riches. He's got a problem with a lust for riches. Nowhere in Scripture does God say, if you're rich, you're bad, and you shouldn't be rich. He says a lust for riches will lead you into temptation. That word desire is not, I'd sure like to make some more money. I'd sure like to be blessed in my business. It is a craving. It is a lusting. It is a preoccupation. You will crush people to get money. You don't care. You'll sacrifice family, friendship, relationship, and sometimes even faith for your lust for money. He says you'll fall into temptation, into a snare. Listen to this language. Into many senseless, doesn't even make sense, and harmful desires, harms you and others, and it will plunge you. Listen to this language. It will plunge people into ruin and destruction. Whoa. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It doesn't say money is the root of all evil. First of all, it says the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. All evil and all kinds of evil, there's a really big difference. It doesn't say all evil, it says all kinds of evil. And it never says money alone. It says the lust for money. That word love there is not, oh man, I sure appreciate my money. It's, I need more. The lust of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some of these leaders, Timothy, have wandered away even from their trust in God. Now, God inspires Paul to take this pagan term and bring it into a redemptive context because of Jesus. And he says, now we, as serving the one true God, we are to be godly. Oh, and by the way, a little caveat here. Godliness comes with settledness. So what does it mean to be godly? Here's the root. Here's the essence, I believe, of godliness. It's very simple. It means to be God-aware. God-aware. This God awareness affords you a settledness, the riches of a settled soul. Now, same guy, Paul, who wrote to his sidekick, Batman to Robin, he writes to a church in Philippi. The book is called the Book of Philippians. For some of you longtime Jesus followers, this is like one of your life verses. Philippians chapter 4, verse 11. Same guy writing now to a church in Philippi. He says, I'm not speaking to be in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be settled, to be content. He goes on and says, I know how to be brought low. I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. Now, you need to understand who this man is. The words he's saying are so profound, and they have much depth to them. Paul is a man who has been shipwrecked. He has been snake bit. There have been assassination attempts on his life. There are blogs that speak ill things about him. CNN, Fox, and every ABC, NBC, they've all aired shows against him and how bad and deplorable this man is. The people's perception is negative oftentimes. He has been a hated man. He has been publicly flogged. He has been publicly whipped. Paul has had some difficult times since he signed up to follow Jesus. And he just wrote, you cannot exaggerate when you're writing the Bible. He says, in every situation I am in, I know how to be settled. You mean to tell me, Paul, in the middle of the ocean when you're holding on to a piece of a ship, you were settled? Yes. Do you mean when you were behind bars in prison, you were settled? Yes. Do you mean when you were being persecuted and misrepresented and maligned, you were settled? You were content? Yes. Wow. And I'm not even settled because I didn't get the pay raise I wanted. He says, I've learned the secret. Everybody lean in. And let's get the secret to being settled when you're at the height of success and affluence, and when you're at the lowest place, i.e. behind bars. Now, I'm cool with being settled, but in prison, Paul was like, the word settled, I mean, honestly, the idea of he discovered enjoyment in every circumstance and situation. How? Here's the secret. Some of you, this is your famous verse, your favorite verse in all the Bible, or the most famous verse in all the Bible, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13 is Paul revealing his secret to settledness in every situation of his life. It's a secret. Philippians 4:13 is the secret. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Whatever I have, wherever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. Who makes me who I am. What is Paul revealing? My position doesn't make me who I am. My income doesn't make me who I am. Your perception of me doesn't make me who I am. By the way, why spend the rest of your life worrying about stuff you can't control? You know what you can't control? People's perception of you. You know what you can't control? How money comes and how money goes. Some of us think we can control it all. You can't. A budget help, I recommend it. We got city groups throughout the church that'll help you with your resources and finances, but sometimes money makes wings and flies away. All of a sudden somebody's mad at you, sues you, somebody maligns you, you gotta pay some, and all of a sudden money, it's like, God, what is going on? And you think you can control money? You think you can control politics? You think you can control the economy? You think you can control your boss or your manager? You can't. And you're going to go crazy trying to do it. And if you find your identity in those things, your identity will fluctuate like the winds. But Paul says, I know who I am. God has defined me. God makes me who I am. And what he's saying is, I have learned in every situation to acknowledge my source, to acknowledge my deliverer, to acknowledge my strength. And my strength is not in my checking account or my savings account or my position or my prominence or people's perception or my popularity. Who I am, my identity is found in him. So in the middle of an ocean, I'm aware that he's my strength, and I find some settledness in an ocean. Are you serious, Paul? Yeah. Wow. In prison, snake bit, almost assassinated, whipped, chained. And the Bible makes it explicit. Guess where it stems from? God awareness. Don't ever underestimate the power of God awareness. The ability to acknowledge and be conscious of God's immediate presence in whatever circumstance you find. This God awareness affords you a settledness, the riches of a settled soul.